More money to the local government does not necessarily translate to better grassroots development. We have to bear that in mind. So it's not just about redistributing powers and redistributing money. It's about creating an effective structure that allows people to hold government accountable, that allows the best chair of government that is positioned to perform a particular duty to perform that duty with a mechanism of oversight that works. And which brings me to one point. If you want to give the state governors more money and give them more powers, and you allow them to have immunity, you're creating a disaster, for Christ's sake.
Okay.
So we have to strike that balance. If we're giving them more power, they should have a qualified immunity. If we are taking away powers from federal government, we also try to see how we can reduce the workforce at the federal level and absorb them at the state level. So it is not an easy process for us to strike this balance. We have to say that. It's going to take a lot of political will, a lot of legislative and statutory engineering, and a lot of patience on the part of Nigerians to get this to work. But what must work is a system that allows for serious fiscal oversight.
I was going to ask you, what would it cost for us to do this readjustment? With the picture Mark printed of going back in history, the dreams of the fathers against versus the dreams of the individuals as we speak. Our guest here earlier today talked about the fact that when the individuals coming, they do not want to, let me use this word, rock the boat. What would it cost? You've talked about patience and all that, but indeed, what would it cost us to go back a little or to stop and rock the boat?
Something must give. It has to be a seismic change. It has to be a huge change. We cannot, we have to tell ourselves the truth. We cannot continue to operate this system as it is constantly being operated. It is not just working. We're having security crises all over the country, problem in development, education is falling. The recent events in the country tells you that the health system is almost comatose. We are flying people to Germany to get treatment all over the place. So infrastructure in the country is decaying. Things are going really bad, and we're not able to even stem the tide. We're not able to stem the tide of the decay. So it means that we have to stop, get back in a conversation, and try to see how we can tweak these things to ensure that we can effectively run government. Government is not effective. That is the problem. And the whole cry about true federalism, bring development closer to the people, is simply because people are not feeling government. And this is not just a problem of government. It's also a problem of Nigerians, because all of us are part of this contraption called Nigeria. We're part of this concern called Nigeria. So my point is, what it takes to get this to work, one is political will. Two, it is creative, social, and legal engineering. Three, it is patience and buy-in from the Nigerian people.
Mr. Elo, it seems we all realize that, as it is right now, things are not working as they should and they can work better. A host of people believe that most of the things that need to be done is in our constitution, and so a constitution amendment process has started. Do you have confidence in the constitution amendment process?
Well, I wouldn't want to second guess the National Assembly. I want to assume that they are Nigerians. I want to assume that they understand that this country is in crisis and we need to get it right. So to that extent, I will consider them goodwill in the process. But it goes beyond just enjoying Nigeria's goodwill. One of the greatest problems that the National Assembly is facing is that it is hemorrhaging credibility. There's a serious credibility deficit. Nigerians don't trust them anymore. And this is a good opportunity for them to get Nigerians to trust them. And what this entails is that this constitutional reform process should be premised on the nation's, what is in the best interest of the nation, and not what is in the best interest of individuals. Not what is in the best interest of individuals who want to be governors and they want to create more states. It's not what is in the best interest of individuals who want to control the state paraphernalia and they want to weaken the structures of government. It has to be what is in the best interest of Nigeria. And what is in our best interest is for us to understand that this system is not working. It is only in Nigeria that I know, I could be wrong, where you have an unqualified immunity for people who are in public office. It's only in Nigeria. It doesn't help our federalism. It doesn't help vertical oversight. It doesn't help accountability. It's just not sustainable.
So you think that
it is only in Nigeria that you have a tier of government, local government, that nobody understands its status. Is it independent? Is it not independent? Is it a part of the state? Is it a part of the federal government? We just don't know.
In other words, you
need to clear up that ambiguity.
You subscribe
it
to
is
the
only in
removal of
Nigeria
the immunity clause.
That, pardon me, say that again?
You subscribe to the removal of the immunity clause.
I subscribe
to the removal of immunity clause.
Immunity.
Okay, go ahead.
I subscribe to a qualified immunity.
How do you mean?
What I mean is that if a prima facie case, in the face of it, there is a case against a governor for fraud, for instance, the court can strip that governor of immunity. We don't want to open a floodgate where everybody will be going to court to disturb the operations of the state. But if, for instance, it is established that there is a criminal case against a governor, then the court should be able to strip him of immunity and he stands trial. It is not, it doesn't just make sense that somebody is a governor, he buys over his state assembly, so they can't impeach him. There is a manifest case of fraud against him, and nobody tries him.
All right.
But
that, in my opinion, is not democracy.
Said that the immunity clause doesn't last forever. I mean, how many prosecutions have we seen of governors who leave office after their term?
Keep in mind that sometimes the trail runs cold. Somebody is a governor, he commits a crime in the first year of his governorship, and then 8 years after you want to investigate it. Sometimes it's a big problem.
Talk about this.
I am not excusing the inability of government to prosecute people for crime. I'm just saying that waiting for 8 years makes it a little bit difficult. I'm also saying that the fact that somebody who is in the seat of power knows that he's untouchable, he begins to operate under the delusion that he's a messiah and that he can get away with whatever. So we should have a mechanism where we can check these things when the trail is still very hot.
The Nigeria Bar Association has been saying that in spite of all the process of the Constitution Amendment, they're still going to be asking for a referendum. Would you also advocate a referendum after a Constitution Amendment? Well,
first and foremost, I'm a lawyer. And I ascribe to the position of the Nigerian Bar Association. But the question is this. If you want to conduct a referendum, on which legal block, on which legal foundation are you placing it? It is not a requirement of our Constitution. So that makes it problematic. And it also begins, what is the value of a referendum in terms of its effect on the constitutional reform process? It gives it public credibility. Now, if the referendum fails, for instance, what happens? My point is there is no legal structure, there's no legal foundation where to predicate a referendum. It would be a good move for us to put it in our constitution that constitutional reform processes constitutional review should be subjected to referendum. So that could be something that the National Assembly should be doing right now, to write that into the Constitution so that going forward we can have a referendum. But currently it is not a provision of the Constitution, and I think it's going to be problematic to implement it or to even assign a value to that process.
All right, talking about the local government, since, a lot of states now don't have duly elected local governments in place at the moment, what would you have them do with respect to Section 7 and 8 of the 1999 Constitution? Because some local governments, as the National House of Reps did say, don't seem to subscribe to, if I get that right, financial autonomy. What would you have this committee do about the local governments to amend the laws?
In my village, there's a saying that a goat that is owned by everybody starves to death. And this is the kind of scenario we have with local government. To some extent, the states play an oversight role. The National Assembly also play an oversight role. Everybody is doing one thing there. If you want to create a local government, there's this whole process. So everybody, that all hands on the local government, and it's making it difficult for that tier of government to survive. My suggestion and my recommendation should be that the local government is an independent and autonomous tier of government, just like the states. And you create a structure and create a legal underpinning for this kind of arrangement so that even the local government will play a vertical oversight role as against the state, while the state does the same for local government. It becomes possible, for instance, if a state governor comes to dissolve the local government chairman can go to court and question that action, not just at the state level, but also at the federal level. It becomes necessary that the local governments can also play a role in seeing how governors manage state resources. Just like the states can come and question how the federal government is operating as it affects the states, the local government will be able to also ask the same question when the states overstep the bounds. So let it be an autonomous tier of government.